Hey guys, how's it going? I'm gonna quickly compare the 7Hz Timeless to the Moondrop Blessing 2s and Moondrop Variations. So first, let's go through the bass and how the bass sounds on all three IAMs. So the Variation has a really sub-bass sound that sounds like a bouncy bass that has a lot of exertion. So yeah, that's the bass. The bass is a little too much sometimes, and I wish in turn of that bounciness there was a little more definition. But yeah, other than that, it's really good bass. You can't go wrong with it. So yeah, onto the Timeless. The bass is really good. I'd say up there with the Variations. But it has a slightly different presentation. This one has like a good sub bass, but it's very fast sounding. So it hits the lowest notes, but it's not boomy. So on the Variation, it's a little boomy. And yeah, so I think I prefer the bass sounds on the 7Hz Timeless, because it's not as boomy, basically. It just sounds like it's more a part of the mix. Where the Variation, the bass is really good, but it sounds detached from the mid-range and treble sometimes. And it reminds me of a slight V-shape because of that. So yeah. The Moondrop Blessing 2, for some reason, this one has like a BA bass sound, like something you would get a few years back, where for some reason it doesn't have a good sub bass sound, the Blessing 2. And there's a dynamic driver in here, so I think the quality of the dynamic driver in here doesn't perform as well as some of these two pairs. So yeah, that's the bass. Yeah, so now let's talk about the mid-range. So the mid-range on the Variations is slightly thin, which causes you to think it's somewhat of a V-shape or a slight V-shape. But you don't really miss any details. It's really airy sounding. You get a lot of the detail. So yeah, it's really good. Compared to these two, it is slightly pulled back. But yeah, it's nothing too bad. Really good. And then the 7Hz Timeless, the mid-range, it's really good, but it has like a slight thinness in like the piano notes and stuff. So it doesn't sound extremely convincing. But other than that, most instruments sound really good on this. The Variation just has a little more air. So this is definitely a more airier sound, and it's more expensive, so of course. But yeah, the Timeless is no slouch. It's definitely up there with the Variation. This just has a plainer sound to it. So yeah, the mid-range on the Timeless is really good, and you get all the details. It's not too close up or too pushed back. So yeah, I think it does a really good job with the placement of the sound, even compared to these two in the mid-range. So yeah, that's really good. And then the Blessing 2, the mid-range has some slight BA timbre in it. So it does sound slightly off and a little too smooth sometimes. So the Timeless has way more clarity. Just sounds clearer. Like if you listen to these side by side, you're gonna notice it right away. Like this is a clearer sound. It just has more clarity in the mid-range and treble. So yeah, that's a mid-range. Onto the treble. The Variation has a really airy treble, like everything's floating, so it's really nice. The Timeless, surprisingly, it has more treble than the Variation. But it's not fatiguing. So it's really good. The there's not really anything I don't like about the treble. It just sounds how it should. It extends all the way. You get all the air frequencies. Yeah, so the treble on the Blessing 2, again, it's not that great. There's not much air. It sounds overly smooth. So basically, you don't pick up as many micro nuances on the Blessing 2 as you would on the Timeless, or at least the perception. But yeah, I do think the Timeless is a little more resolving because it just has the right amount of treble. Like, when I'm listening to a song I know that should have a lot of treble, this tells me that, whether it's good or bad. Where on these two, maybe it smoothens it out a little, but this one doesn't really smoothen the treble out at all. It's pretty like authentic, raw, and engaging. So yeah, it just sounds really unique. So one thing I'm going to note is the Timeless, the speed of the driver is really quick, even when you compare it to these two. So it's quite evident these two are run by multiple drivers, but this one doesn't sound like that. And initially I thought these two were really, really good, so how could a single driver sound as good? But this is proof that it sounds that good. So all the frequencies come across pretty good. If I had to nitpick, I would say I wish there was better soundstage and imaging. Slightly more vocal air at times. But other than that, it sounds really good. And I wish like some notes didn't sound thin. Like a piano, it just sounds like not fully defined. But I mean, it's a plainer IM. But yeah, this is tuned exceptionally well. I haven't really heard an IM sound this good. So basically, to close things out. Oh wait, one more thing. So I'm going to talk about the soundstage and imaging. I forgot about that. So the Variations, it does an exceptional job with placing everything. Probably the best out of these three. But the 7-Hertz Timeless, again, is really close. Like, I would say the Timeless is like 90 or 95% there of the Variations. Like, that's how good it is. And then the Blessing 2 is maybe like 60 or 70% there of the Variations, because this has a lot of flaws in the sound. So yeah, if I have to say how each IM, what I think it sounds like, the Blessing 2 sounds like a $250 IM about, and then the Timeless sounds like a $400 or $450 IM. And then the Variations definitely sounds like a $500 IM. No question about that. So yeah, overall, hopefully that was helpful. If I had to pick between all of these, honestly, I would go with the 7-Hertz Timeless or the Variations. If I had to pick which tuning I like more, it would go to the Timeless, because it just sounds more balanced across the board. And yeah, for the price, I don't think I've heard anything that sounds this good. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, leave a comment and a like if you found it helpful.